Welcome, everybody. You're in for a treat. We have three presenters in this session. The introduced first, Ahmad Farhat. He has been working on both ScaleLite and Greenlight in the BigBlueButton project and has been with us for off and on for 5-6 years.
4 years? Yeah.
4 years, yeah. So Ahmed started off as a student working on BigBlueButton and quickly took on more responsibility. I want to introduce Jesus Federico, who is amongst the core developers, the longest person involved with the project. Jesus, I believe you've been with us for 12 years now.
Yeah, now, 12 years, exactly.
So it's worth pointing out that if you see an integration for BigBlueButton, Jesus has been involved with it. That might be Moodle, that might be Greenlight, that might be ScaleLite, and it also includes LTI. So again, we're going to touch on the ScaleLite part in this presentation. And the third one I want to introduce, Thierry Kauffmann. Thierry, you're one of the principal engineers at ARWA. ARWA has been involved with the deployment of a scalable version of BigBlueButton for the French Ministry of Education, or sort of more broadly, the country of France. And in doing so, you've been using both ScaleLite and BigBlueButton. And will certainly give us an industry perspective in terms of the work that we've been doing. So with that, Jesus and others, I will turn it over to you. The floor is yours.
Right. Thank you, Fred. Hello and welcome, everybody, for joining us to this presentation. Well, we all have our own introduction, so I'm going to go quickly through my slide. So it's already there. So I'm Jesus Federico. I'm a software engineer. I've been in the field for more than 20 years, and in those working on several projects and organizations. But I'm also a member of the BigBlueButton project, a core developer since more than 10 years ago, mostly working, as Fred mentioned, on integrations and value-added applications. I like to always go, and especially in this case, to present this slide. This is the only one that I promise I'm gonna show you about commercial stuff. And this is because BigBlueButton, as you know, BigBlueButton is an open source virtual classroom built for teachers to teach, for helping teachers to teach and learners to learn. Open source is the key word. And in this case, Blindside Networks is the company that started the BigBlueButton project about 15 years ago, 2007, and is home for some of those developers who started the project. And it's particularly important and relevant in this case because the product or component that we're talking about, which is a ScaleLite, was precisely developed and brought to the open source by Blindside Networks. So I'm one of the engineers as well there. So when we think about BigBlueButton, we normally the normal thing that comes to our mind is the BigBlueButton itself. But Fred was mentioning in the core in the keynote, opening keynote yesterday, BigBlueButton is a large community that is backing up the project, and is also an interesting mix of products or components that form the ecosystem of the BigBlueButton project itself. So among them, we see Greenlight as the front end, the de facto front end for BigBlueButton. BigBlueButton LTI, and the, let's say, more relevant integration component for bringing LMSs that don't have native integration into BigBlueButton. Other that are helpful for system administrators, such as for installations and stuff. And we have, of course, ScaleLite, which is the tool that is helping us to scale and make use of BigBlueButton massively. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into that, I'm going to do what the elders do. Fred mentioned that I'm one of the oldest guys here, 12 years working on BigBlueButton. What we do is we tell stories. So I'm going to tell you a story. But this is a story of success. Not long ago, and you might remember, and you should remember, that the days that we passed through COVID-19 was difficult to get around. We were not able to see people. We were not able to visit places, to travel and do the things that we like to do and enjoy doing. Education was one of those areas or sectors that was mostly or first affected by the pandemic. And a matter of a week, probably in some places overnight, or in Canada in particular, was over a weekend. We saw that those classrooms where institutions come to have those teachers to teach and students to learn um, closed, and they went from these crowded rooms where people is doing what they do to empty rooms that were not being filled in about 2 years. The institutions obviously were trying to keep it going, keep the ball rolling, and they wanted to have. Some of them were already prepared, some of them were not, and those who were prepared were even prepared to deliver content online, but they were not prepared to deliver at the scale they were required to, and some others were just coming into the this world of online learning. So that familiar might resound on your ears because you might be some of the ones who had to deal with that problem. In China, as you know, was the first country to be hit by this virus, and obviously the repercussions were in all their society. Education was not the exception. So the first lockdown we saw them happening in China. It was University of Liverpool or in Xianyangtong University. The two of them combined have a campus in there in China, and they are not new to online learning. They have been teaching for several years online. They actually have above 15,000 students and more than 700, as you can see on the slide, uh, um, teachers, academic staff that teach from different parts of the world. So they were not new on this, but they were, as every other university there, advised that in a matter of 6 weeks, that was the announce was done in January, like mid-January. In a matter of 6 weeks, they will be closing their doors and will be on lockdown, but they wanted to continue giving their classes to the students. So they were already using BigBlueButton, and at the time, the director of technology there, a friend of us, the BigBlueButton project, Blindside Networks in general, and Fred and myself in particular came to us, and he said that he wanted to continue doing it through BigBlueButton, but they were not able. At the time, they only had one server, and they wanted to have multiple servers. Well, that solution, how do he was looking for advice. What do you tell them? Well, there are two ways of you can scale a system like this. You either scale up or you scale out. By scaling up, we know that, well, you just put the biggest server you can find, and hopefully that will hold the demand that you have. But we know that a server can only do that much. So the other solution is scaling out, having multiple servers and spread the load among them. So of course, for us, that was the natural solution to offer to them, scaling out. So we put a number of, we told them that they had to put a number of servers, BigBlueButton servers, and a load balancer on top, a solution that we were already familiar with because all the companies in that, doing business around BigBlueButton, and here are the four at least are the ones who back up this project around the world. There are many more, and all of them might have or must have already a load balancer at this point, but these were the ones that we knew they had. There was a commercial load balancer that they would not be willing or able to put in the open source or give to this university. So what do we do? Or what we did is what every little bunch of smart and well-looking engineer will do. We come together and we say, yeah, we're going to write a new one. And and we say, but we have to do it quick. So we have to have a quick solution. And that's what we did. We came together and we went to the boardroom. I wish there was a boardroom. We had a boardroom, but in this case, it was just the board pretty much. And on the board, we started like just outlining how the solution will look like. And we came up with this one, which is the ScaleLite project. ScaleLite project started on January 31st, 2020, and that was you can see Calvin's first commit, and that's the glorious first commit. And from there, there was iteration after iteration until we got the version that was deployed and was used by them. Since then, by the time COVID hit North America, we were kind of prepared because we had the system. We didn't know, we didn't advertise that the open source, the system was open source, but we then realized that people was downloading it and started asking for help and all those things. So we saw that growing from that little scalable. Well, let me go back in one slide. From that simple load balancer for BigBlueButton written in Ruby on Rails to become a scalable load balancer for BigBlueButton, which is what it is right now. And this is the last screen capture that we have, and is, as you can see, we have 96 tags, 249 forks, and 89 releases, which the last one was just released last week. And as things keep coming, as you will see, and Ahmad will show you in a minute. We have more than 1 million of downloads. Probably so those are our own installations as well. But well, there are many. So this number has been there for more than a year. I'm thinking that it might hit the number 2 and pretty soon. That is what we have. So 2020 to 2023 is full of great stories. We heard from firsthand from universities, institutions in general, organizations, companies who made a business out of BigBlueButton through COVID. They created and they did good things using BigBlueButton, but particularly growing through ScaleLite. And many great stories. And with us today, we have one of those stories. And I give the floor to you, my friend.
Thank you, Jesus. Let me present myself. I'm Thierry Kauffmann. I'm a French computer scientist. I've been an open source software enthusiast since 2004 for 18 years, and I have specific skills in systems administration and software development. I've been working for Arawa, a French company specialized in open source, and I've been building our video conferencing hosting offering around BigBlueButton, ScaleLite, Greenlight, and Nextcloud since 2020. So we were early adopters of ScaleLite, which we complemented in 2021 by our scale-out solution called DVMS. It's an orchestration solution that was sponsored by the French Ministry of Education, one of our first customers for this offering. And let me talk quickly about Arawa. Well, so Arawa is a French company, an open source integrator of collaborative work platforms. We started working with implementing and deploying Nextcloud and Collabora Online, and finished with BigBlueButton and DVMS in the last years. You can find many other examples of what we're doing on our website. So let me show you what a typical deployment of ScaleLite looks like when it's orchestrated with DVMS, our solution to auto-scale the number of BigBlueButton servers. So if you look at ScaleLite, the typical deployment, ScaleLite operates on many BigBlueButton servers, but the number of servers is fixed. Here you can see B3 Desk, which was developed by the French Ministry of Education. It's a management system for rooms, specialized, specific for BigBlueButton. It is similar to Greenlight and to Pylos that was presented earlier today. So ScaleLite allows to use many BigBlueButton servers at the same times. And with the help of DVMS, you can also auto-scale the number of BigBlueButton servers. And so it adapts to high loads and to low loads, mainly during nights. This is why we developed it for the French Ministry of Education. This is mostly working at day, although having teams on 5 continents. And the last release of ScaleLite introduced multi-tenancy that allows us to deploy a single ScaleLite for many customers at the same time. Usually we use a single ScaleLite per each customer, but the last release of ScaleLite adds a new functionality. So tenants, in the example of the France Université Numérique, who will be the first user, our first customer to use it. Tenants are universities or large organizations. Each tenant sees ScaleLite as a dedicated server, and you can have custom settings per tenant, recordings per tenant, and the API that was added also in this release of ScaleLite enables a better integration with DVMS. So we're very glad that Blindside Networks added this functionality feature to ScaleLite. There is one missing piece of one missing feature that we are waiting for, is the ability to have custom presentations per users, but we will probably use Nextcloud to do this. Now let me give voice to Ahmad to present you more in detail this multi-tenancy feature.
Thank you, Thierry. Hey everyone, my name is Ahmad. I've been a software developer at Blindside Networks for 4 years now. I graduated from a local university here called Carleton University with a degree in computer science and a specialization in computer and internet security. But I did graduate, my last year was during COVID year, so I don't know if that counts. But we'll have to see as I continue my career. I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of the latest releases of ScaleLite and the roadmap of ScaleLite going forward. And I've got a few slides, one with roadmap and then one with roadmap in quotations, which we'll kind of get to. And Thierry touched on multi-tenancy a bit. So the idea with ScaleLite was now, how do we scale this to provide all of our, users or all of the system admins that are using ScaleLite to be able to offer the best possible scenario for their own users. And that's where we hit the answer of multi-tenancy. There was, I think his name was Samuel, who was talking about Pylos, 2 presentations ago, where he said they were running 6 Greenlight instances. So the idea here is instead of running 6 ScaleLite instances, you would run one ScaleLite instance tailored to each tenant, and each tenant would get their own secret, their own endpoint, their own recordings, their own rooms, and their own settings, which I'll touch on in a second as well. So the idea is we kind of can take one ScaleLite deployment and make it act, as X number of deployments. It could be 100, it could be 5,000. I don't know how you can go, but you know, assume you're a system admin, you've got 10 universities, you can set up each ScaleLite tenant to work in the way that you would like. And that's where we introduce tenant settings, where for each tenant that you create, you can specify specific settings for that tenant. Maybe this university does not want anything recorded. Maybe this university wants a separate welcome message. Maybe this university wants, wait for moderator. Maybe this one wants webcams disabled. All of those different settings that you could find under the create and join API calls for BigBlueButton can be configured per tenant. And we even went a step further to make them configurable in a default or an override. And what that means is if it's a default, then if the user or the front end passes in a different value, that value will be taken. If no value is passed, then the default comes in. Whereas the override is no matter what the front end passes, the override will always take precedence over that. So if you wanted to force all recording to be off, you would, put record false with the override flag set to true. We also introduced API management, which should help. It's still the first step, of course, but should help a bit with auto scaling and kind of interacting with ScaleLite. At the time when ScaleLite was written, we were looking to write something quick. So this is where years down the road we've ended up, where you can get, add, update, delete, panic your servers dynamically through API calls. Which should allow you, assuming you build some external tool, to auto scale ScaleLite to match your needs. You can spin up, let's say theoretically 10 servers in the morning, and then at some point, if the day ends, everyone's going to sleep, you could just take down all 10 of those servers with additional steps. But you could do that all now through the ScaleLite API. You were able to do that before with rake tasks, but now the API adds the extra layer of usability. So talking a little bit about the roadmap. This is the first roadmap. These are things that are I want to say are concrete. These are things that will happen in the near future. Starting from the top going down, we'll be going XAPI support will be added. We're looking at improving the load balancing algorithm to something that's a lot more accurate. Right now, it just takes a ratio of users and rooms, I believe it is. Number of users, number of rooms, or number of meetings, sorry. We're going to look at doing something that factors in, number of webcams, number of screen shares, number of users, some kind of ratio of that so you can more accurately load balance across the servers. After that, we're going to do something called VIP meetings, which is, finding a way to identify that a meeting is, VIP. This is like the CEO. This is, the head of the university speaking. We want this on a server where nothing else exists, or we don't, we want to put this on a server and make sure nothing else comes onto the server. So that's something we'll do. And then finally, we're looking at moving the ScaleLite documentation into the docs.bigbluebutton.org documentation. Right now the ScaleLite docs aren't fantastic. They could use quite a bit of work. So hopefully when we move them there, they'll be refined, they'll be cleaned up. It'll be a lot easier to find things or search things or follow the steps of ScaleLite when it gets moved to there. And then finally, I'm going to put roadmap here in question mark. I tried to come up with something funny and I couldn't. I was going to say something like parking lot map because it's not a road. It's kind of just a bunch of things all in different places of these kind of ideas that some of us have of things potentially to fix in ScaleLite. The question mark is just, when, where, how, and who. Big ones, GDPR compliance, installation strategy, dropping Redis. There's some race conditions we have to deal with, pools and groups for servers. revisiting meeting polling. These are just things that we've kind of have like high level ideas of that in the case where things do change in the future, we'll take on, or once we do have some free time to free up, we'll tackle these on at some point. I'm kind of skimming through everything because we're running out of time. So the last step, basically what I did is I asked ChatGPT to come up with a good one-liner to end a presentation on ScaleLite. And it actually came up with something pretty good, which was propelling the future of online education, one balanced server at a time. That's kind of a one-line explaining what the ScaleLite team is attempting to do with extension, Blindset Networks. So just for the interest of time, I think I'll end it there. You guys, maybe I'll pass it back to Jesus or Fred.
Thank you, Ahmed. I think, yeah, that's it. At this point, we have the floor open for questions. Thank you, Maxine. I don't think there are many questions. Probably people who is here is very well acquainted with the ScaleLite project. Well, we have one here. You want to take that one, Ahmed?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand it. No, so the way it works is with ScaleLite has its own host name, and then each individual BigBlueButton server has its own host name. If you want to connect, you could theoretically connect directly to that server if you wanted, but you would have to use the ScaleLite host name, the endpoint and the secret to get through into those servers. I'm not sure if I understood your question right. The next question with regards to VIP meeting. Is any heuristic ideas? I don't know what that word means. English not my best language, so. Jesus, do you know what that word means?
The
heuristic ideas.
For the VIP meet, well, we have ideas for VIP, and I have that request still in the roadmap. We have to work on it, but we're still thinking on the best way to implement it. You're thinking about the heuristic algorithm for throwing the load to the server, to the the BigBlueButton server.
Yes. So the question is, will the next session coming in, will it be a large one, as each session begins with one single person creating it at the first stage, and at this time you have to distribute it. So, is there any way to give the API the information? Hey, let's say during that time of the week, usually large conferences will happen. So we will change our strategy to provide empty servers at this time. This was some kind of artificial intelligence approach, I guess, if you don't like heuristic, which is basically the same meaning.
Yes. Go ahead, Jesus, if you want.
No, I was just gonna say that's what I assumed I was, but it's more what we're looking into is more deterministic. It's more based on the data that is already gathered, because we don't have there are several solutions that we can go through. One of them is trying to have an agent in BigBlueButton and having to pull that push that information into the ScaleLite server, so it has the constant feedback of what's the load. But in the way it is right now, we are still on the pulling information, so it has to be more deterministic to an state that we have at one particular point. So yeah, there are ideas, but it's not perfectly clear how that is going to be. One thing though is one of the things that Ahmad mentioned is, and we consider that as a priority, is to fix the way the balancing is done, and then we can get into this VIP.
I can confirm that this approach is efficient because the load on the servers is roughly equal on each server. So our experience shows that this deterministic approach is very efficient. I saw a project led by MConf on some sort of on a load balancing based on AI, but it's still a project, and I'm not sure if it will be more efficient. It will use more power to compute how to spread the load, but it's not obvious that it will be more efficient. My point of view.
Yeah, to answer the two questions kind of in one, there's also something called the load minimum user count and the load join buffer time, which ScaleLite uses as like a default value when any room gets created. It estimates the size to a certain number, and then it waits 15 minutes or whatever, and then it starts taking the real value of it. So with the VIP meetings, it'll be essentially that, right? It'll come in as an extremely large meeting. This is one idea, of course. It'll come in with an extremely large meeting and try to kind of push away all the other meetings onto the other servers. But we'll need to wait and see how we implement it. And then to answer Dimitri's point, it's something that we need BigBlueButton to present to us, right? If BigBlueButton presents to us these statistics, ScaleLite can then use that to load balance. But if BigBlueButton doesn't, then ScaleLite, from an external point of view, can't handle or can't figure out a server's CPU. Ideally, if we could do something like an API call to the BigBlueButton server that tells us, I'm at 50% load, or this is my current statistics, then it would be the best for ScaleLite's point of view. But as a short, for the time being, we can take the information from like a get meeting info call or a get meetings call that gives us the participants and the videos and the audio and all that kind of number of screen shares, and we can kind of make an estimation based off of that. And then finally, Pablo's question. Yeah, so the servers have their own host name. ScaleLite has its own host name as well. The request comes into ScaleLite, but then the meetings are hosted directly on the BigBlueButton server with its own host name. So I think that should answer your question.
All right, I think we can get one more. We have just passed the time for the meeting presentation, and there is none. All right, well, thank you very much everybody for coming, and I hope to see you in the next meetings.